National Signing Day is here, and Ohio State football fans should be excited about the amount of talent Ryan Day has stockpiled in this year's recruiting class.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Wednesday, December 21st in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During this episode, we will discuss the proper mindset and role Ryan Day, CJ Stroud, and the other players need to tap into going into their game against the Georgia Bulldogs. And Ohio State had a Big Ten Freshman of the Week on the basketball court. Bryce Sensabaugh is a dog. We'll talk about what he did against North Carolina last week. But before we get to any of that, National Signing Day is here. This is the early portion of National Signing Day, and numerous athletes that sign on the dotted line today will be early enrollees at Ohio State and other colleges around the country to go to campus in January and get an early start at being a college football player. This day is big. It's huge. I am excited about the amount of talent Ohio State has literally stockpiled in this recruiting class. And also, this recruiting class, the amount of players that are in it and those that will commit to the school, it's not complete. There are more players that will end up announcing commitments to Ohio State on today. One of them being Joshua Mickens. I do think he's leaning towards the Ohio State Buckeyes. He is announcing his commitment at 12 p.m. noon Eastern time. I first saw that report from Kyle Nednerip. He covers high school sports for the Indianapolis Star. And then Mickens later on tweeted out that information as well. Mickens being one of them. We talked about it yesterday. Will Mateo Uiagalelei or Damon Wilson, will one of them, the other two, commit to Ohio State on Wednesday? That's still up in the air. That's a TBD to be determined, just like Joshua Mickens. But then you also have today being the day where numerous players that have been verbal commits will be players that are officially ending their recruitment and signing on the dotted line, signing their national letter of intent and saying, this is where I'm going to play at least my first year of college football. I have seen a few players already say that they are going to sign on that line. They tweeted that thing out. Of course, I'm sure more of them will, more of them that have been hard verbal commits, more of them will sign as well. But I got Lincoln Kienholz, talented, uber wild, athletic quarterback from South Dakota. He said he's going to be signing. Luke Montgomery, offensive lineman, he's going to be signing. Brandon Ennis, he said he's going to be signing. There was some speculation by some. Would he decommit? No. Brandon Ennis said at the time at the tweet, 24 hours, he was going to put pen to paper. Miles Walker, offensive lineman. Austin Sierveld, offensive lineman. These guys are going to be putting pen to paper and signing their national letter of intent. The Buckeyes recruiting class has one 5-star currently in Brandon Ennis. That's a hard verbal commit. I do think there could be a couple more that happen on today. Keep in mind that there is a possibility of players flipping to other schools on National Signing Day. We talked about it recently, how the Buckeyes at quarterback, there's been a constant cycle. We got this guy. Oh, no, we don't. We got this guy. Oh, no, we don't. Oh, let's go out and get two. Oh, we got this kid. He's already on campus. Oh, he transfers. We talked about how that thing is going to happen. And DeJuan Mathis being a quarterback who ended up flipping from Ohio State to Georgia on National Signing Day a few years ago. And outside of him playing at Georgia, many people have not heard DeJuan Mathis's name being a premier quarterback or player in college football for the time when he started for the Bulldogs. It was either last year or a couple years ago at the beginning of the season. So don't be surprised if you get if players flip either from Ohio State to somewhere else or to Ohio State from somewhere else. Don't think that is not that flips are not going to happen. It's the nature of the beast, and some of these athletes are going to where the money is, and a lot of that money is at schools in the South. Not just the Southeastern Conference, well, A&M's there as well. Not just the southeastern portion of the country, but A&M, Texas, I believe Oklahoma, Oregon, USC, UCL. You get my drift. Even think about this. With Deion Sanders at Colorado, I would not be shocked if you get a player that's currently committed to a school, maybe not Ohio State, but committed to a school and ultimately decommits to go play for prime time over there in Boulder, Colorado. This is the nature of the beast. Deion brings eyeballs. Deion brings elite coaches. Deion brings a lot to you. And Deion Sanders allows you to be at his school and have a chance of winning a trophy at the end of the season. May it not be year one. May he not win the Pac-12 championship or or anything like that. I bet you that the Colorado Buffaloes go 6-6 next year in the regular season, which is a major step in the right direction after going 1-11. That's just one school where you might say, Jay, could a player flip from Ohio State to somewhere else? I named a few. Money talks. A coach like Deion, that personality, that talks as well. But the verbal commits, Ohio State having 20 of them, I am excited about what they have. Noah Rogers, Brandon Ennis, Luke Montgomery, Carnell Tate, Jason Moore, Calvin Simpson-Hunt, Jelani Thurman, Jermaine Matthews, Malik Hartford, Arvell Reese, a talented linebacker from Cleveland, Ohio, out of Glenville High School, Lincoln Kienholz, Kyan Lee. I've heard people saying he might flip and go somewhere else. Got to wait and see where he signs tomorrow, or today. Josh Padilla, Austin Serveld, Will Smith Jr. Yes, it is the son of Ohio State great Will Smith Sr., Jaden Bonsu, Caden McDonald, Cedric Hawkins, Bryson Rogers, and then last but not least, the last hard verbal commit, Miles Walker. Excited to see the future of this group and excited to see what players sign on National Signing Day, the early period. And then also, there'll be players that sign today that don't announce their commitment until they play it in an All-American game on national television. Hey, there could be players 2 or 3 that sign to be signed to Ohio State today, but don't announce it till a few weeks from now. That's just the way recruiting works, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future and what players say, hey, Ohio State is a spot for me. This is where I'm going to play my college football. Speaking of playing college football, the Buckeyes have a big game in about a week and a half from now on New Year's Eve against the Georgia Bulldogs. And there's a mindset the Buckeyes need to have going into that game. And based off the history of Ryan Day coach teams, I think he knows how to tap into what to tap into in the players so they have the proper mindset in the Peach Bowl. What mindset is it? We'll discuss that next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, and even to basketball. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast as well. The biggest stories of the day around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, they can be found at Locked On Sports Today. Plus, you can find instant reactions, big game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your fine podcasts. So let's go back in time a little bit. 2020, a weird year for everybody. I'm not trying to relive everything that happened in that year from March until the end of the year, but we all remember the college football season, especially Ohio State fans. How going into that season, many people wondered, who was going to be in the national championship game. It's probably going to be Alabama. A lot of people didn't know if Ohio State had what it takes. But then when you saw that Ohio State had put together some things in the offseason, an abnormal offseason that was going to propel them and allow them to be head and shoulders above everybody once again in the Big Ten Football Conference, you get to play Clemson in a rematch of a game from a year ago in 2019, where I still think the Buckeyes had a great, not saying I know they had a great shot to win it. And even though there was a miscue late in the game, if some calls went the Buckeyes' way earlier, even if they had the miscues in the red zone, the Buckeyes still could have won that game. Buckeyes lose a heartbreaker to Clemson in 2019. Clemson goes on to play in the Natty and lose to LSU. So the Tigers of LSU win the national championship. In 2020, it was a rematch of Clemson. And people were wondering how the Buckeyes would perform in this game. I was wondering. Everyone thought, and I even thought, that Clemson was going to win the game. I was kind of being too much of a homer. I remember this back then, being too much of a homer in my analysis and not properly realizing what is at stake right now and what this team brings to the table. But Ohio State shocked everybody with the way that they played against Georgia. The up-tempo offense, Justin Fields being dialed in and locked in, Justin Fields getting popped by James Skalski. It looked like literally a helmet to the ribs. Misses a play, and it comes back in and scores a touchdown on his first play back on the field after getting hit by Skalski. And then we all remember that bomb, literally that bomb he threw to Chris Olave, 60 yards in the air, touchdown, Olave, Fields to Olave, touchdown. And everyone saw when the Buckeyes tapped into somewhat of an underdog role. People counted them out. People said you should. People said, hey, you're here. You deserve to be here. But you're not going to beat Clemson. Clemson is better than you in this sport. The Buckeyes said no. And ultimately, that's the same mindset the Buckeyes need to have going up against Georgia. I think I see the spread is at 5.5, 6, maybe 6.5. Right now, it started off at a touchdown, which means Vegas is saying, hey, this might be closer than you think. And now, do I think it's going to get down to 3 or 3.5 by the time of kickoff? No. I could see maybe at the closest it's going to get is the Buckeyes being a 5-point underdog, which is still a lot. And ultimately, I do believe that the Buckeyes playing in Georgia, playing in Atlanta, and this being a not an on paper home game for Georgia, but with the proximity from Athens to Atlanta, how close it is, this is still kind of a home game for Georgia. I do believe the Buckeyes need to tap into that underdog role. And Ryan Day, some of the pregame speeches that he has, I think that he really needs to do whatever he did back then. But ultimately, the Buckeyes rode their quarterback, Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields played the game of his life. The best game I've ever seen him play as an Ohio State Buckeye was against Clemson in 2020 in the playoff. I do believe the Buckeyes, and I want to say that was a Sugar Bowl that year. I do believe this Buckeye team has what it takes to win the game. And I think that, I'm not going to say I think. I know and I believe this with my I believe this 100%. CJ Stroud has to get outside of himself. Has to get out of his own way, has to be able to not tap into something that he has never tapped into before, or figure out a way to tap into something that he has never tapped into before. Maybe he knows he has an extra gear that he has never tapped into. Whatever it is, Stroud, do that thing. I do believe Eichenberg, Tuimoloau, Harrison, Michael Hall Jr., Teron Vincent, Steele Chambers, Ronnie Hickman, Lathan Ransom, Denzel Burke. I believe the defense is going to rise to the occasion. I firmly believe in the defense, and I want to believe their tackling will get better. Their inability to track the ball in the air, that can't get better. That can get better over 3 weeks, but it can't get astronomically better like it needs to. But I do think this team is going to be up to the task of playing Georgia. I do think they're going to play a phenomenal game. It comes down to this offense. I firmly believe if Stroud taps into something, finds an extra gear somewhere, probably doesn't know that he has it, but once he taps into it, he realizes, hey, we can do this. We can beat Georgia. I said it earlier. I think I said it the first week after the Buckeyes were announced that they're in the playoff. Forget listening to people. I would love for the players to listen to this podcast daily. I would love for it. But is it honestly the best way and proper way for them to prepare for the game? Probably not, because most athletes cannot listen to podcasts and radio stations, radio shows, and read the articles and still be able to properly focus in on the task at hand. Which is why LeBron James goes into zero dark 30 mode where he used to, and he would just block out all the noise, turn off social media, and ultimately lock in playoff mode. And we would see what LeBron would do when that went into full effect. I do believe the Buckeyes need to do this now. I understand. I saw the podcast, Austin Ward, Bill Landis, and Jeremy Birmingham. They had different Buckeye players on, had CJ Stroud being one of them on the podcast. Yes, I understand. There's some media things that would be great, and being players want to come on this podcast to be interviewed. That would be great as well. But ultimately, I firmly believe, and I will say it all the time, lock in. And if lock in for you to tap into the underdog role and to really hop into that and just to play off the wall types of football, if that means turning off all media, do it. I understand, and I have seen Kyle McCord. He's a backup, but he has still done some things via social media, some ads and NIL deals. I get all of that. And if you have an NIL deal or something to where you're making money off of a post, do that. I'm not going to say don't do that. But be careful about reading into or listening into too much stuff, because it might not allow you to properly tap into the underdog role that I believe is needed for the Buckeyes to win this game. The proper mindset's needed. Tapping into the underdog role is needed. And I firmly believe that's the best way for the Buckeyes to come out firing on all cylinders in the Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve. A player that has been firing on all cylinders, who was recognized for his performance in a game less than a week ago against North Carolina, is Bryce Sensabaugh, star freshman for the Ohio State basketball team, was recently recognized as Big Ten Freshman of the Week. We'll discuss what he has done this year and specifically what he did against North Carolina next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. Billiards Plus also can set you up with a brand new top-of-the-line grill that will last for generations. We all know how hard it is this year with the supply chain issues and getting certain things shipped on time. So when it comes to ordering that one big gift for Christmas, check out Billiards Plus and get there early this year. Pick something out and get it shipped in time for Christmas. It is a gift the whole family will enjoy year-round. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Alhassan, Canada, Billiards, and more. Plus, top-of-the-line grills from PK Napoleon, Memphis, and Le Griddle. That will be the last grill you own. Seriously, these grills stand the test of time. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Check them out at billiards-plus.com. Billiards Plus, family owned and operated for generations. I recently had that opportunity to hop on the Philip Jordan show, and him and I discussed how the Ohio State Buckeyes will beat Georgia in the Peach Bowl a week and a half from today. Go ahead and check out the Philip Jordan Show. You can find it on the YouTube. You can find it on the Apple Podcast app, the Google Podcast app, the Spotify, or wherever you get your fine podcast. You can find that show. Philip and I have done numerous shows together. He's been on the Jay Stevens podcast. He's hosted Talking SEC. He does some stuff down there in the South for the high school football. And I love anytime I can talk Ohio State football and chop it up with Philip at the same time. Go check that out. It's a great conversation I had with my guy, Philip Jordan, on the Philip Jordan Show. Bryce Sensabaugh. For those of you that haven't really tapped into this Ohio State basketball team of late, I highly suggest that you do that as quickly as you can. There's a game tonight against Maine. yes, a lesser opponent, but this is a great time for you too. You can get used to the team, learn the players, and figure out who the newcomers are because there are a lot of them from Isaac Likely, who has been out for a while, Oklahoma State transfer, to a guy in Sean McNeil, who's a sharpshooter, to a guy like Tanner Holden coming off of the bench, the Wright State transfer. There are a lot of players on this team that are really, really talented. Zed Key is the second leading scorer on this team, a guy who I do believe at the end of the season will be averaging a double-double. But then also there's Bryce Sensabaugh, 6'6", 235-pound forward out of Orlando from Lake Highland Prep in Florida. This young man is a hooper. He's a leading scorer, doesn't start. He's a freshman, but he does not start, averaging 14.9 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game. And he has a game and a great feel for the basketball on the basketball court, with the basketball in his hand, with the ball, off the ball. And I love what he has done this year in his performance against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Got him awarded Big Ten Freshman of the Week. He is the first Big Ten Freshman of the Week since Malachi Branham won the award on February 28th earlier this year. Here's what was said and highlighted about Bryce Sensabaugh when he won Big Ten Freshman of the Week. He scored a career-high 22 points in Ohio State's overtime loss against to North Carolina in the CBS Sports Classic. He shot 9 for 17 from the field, grabbed 8 rebounds, and handed out 3 assists in the losing effort. He hit a bucket with 3 seconds left in regulation to give the Buckeyes a 2-point lead, which ultimately Pete Nance, a few seconds later, would ultimately tie the game up with a buzzer beater of his own. And the Buckeyes, unfortunately, lost that game. But it wasn't just the buzzer beater. It was from Pete. It wasn't just a shot that he made at the final 3 seconds, but it's his consistency. And as a guy at 6'6", 235, you're wondering, is he a post player? Is he an outside guy? Does he have a good handle? Is he a post-up guy? What is he? He can get you at all 3 levels on the basketball court. Smooth jump shot. Not his go-to, not his forte, but he has a smooth jump shot. Speaking of jump shots, not so much Bryce Sensabaugh, but for Zed Key. Let me tell y'all, I was skeptical, and I talked about it here on the podcast, even laughed and joked a little bit when I heard that Zed Key had the green light at 3. I said, what are y'all doing? That's not Zed Key's move. No. And I will tell you, I was wrong. I am not afraid to tell you when I have been wrong or when I am wrong. And I was wrong. Zed Key from 3. He has the green light because the coaches realize he's not going to shoot a lot of them. They're going to be in rhythm. There's going to be when he knows he has a space. They're going to be when the defense is sagging off of him. He's going to rise up and pop that thing. And Zed Key's 3-point shot and this stroke looks a whole lot better than I anticipated. I was wrong. Zed Key, we're working on your game. I like what I've been seeing from you this year in the paint, but also from behind that 3-point line. Bryce Sensabaugh, though, back to him, he can get you at the 3-point line. But most importantly, that mid-range game, that old-school mid-range game that he has, kind of like that old man at the YMCA, comes in. You know he's not quicker than you. You know he's not faster than you. You know his handles are something that you could normally rip. But he has that smart. He has that grit. He's played the basketball for a while. And what has Bryce Sensabaugh done? He can spin off you, feel your body. He can rise up and shoot the ball. Bryce Sensabaugh, man. I said it earlier on this podcast. I'll say it again. I don't know how Chris Holtman continues to keep him out of the starting lineup. Now, he did get thrust into the starting lineup when Isaac Likely had to go back home to Texas to deal with the family matter. But when you bring him back into the starting lineup, does Sensabaugh go to the bench? Like, I don't know. I understand it. If you do, you want that scoring with your second unit. I completely get that. Similar to my favorite team, the Indiana Pacers, Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona, Pac-12 Player of the Year last year. I get it because Mathurin is a player that I think should start for the Pacers. But Rick Carlisle realizes we have something special with our second unit with Mathurin coming off the bench. So how about we make him our 6th man, similar to Sensabaugh with Ohio State and Chris Holtman, and it really helps and propels the second unit of both teams to be a whole lot better than they originally would be. Bryce Sensabaugh, congratulations, winning your first Big Ten Freshman of the Week award. And I do think if the Buckeyes want to get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, Bryce Sensabaugh will be a big reason why if they accomplish that feat. We're out of here on this Wednesday. Tomorrow's show, planning on having John Garcia Jr. on the show to kind of recap the early signing day and discuss what took place. And on Friday, have a special guest coming on. And also, we'll have a little special Christmas show for you. Still talking about Ohio State and Georgia, but a special Christmas type of feel to it. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. I hope everybody is preparing for this inclement weather to come in our way. Hope you have all your food. Hope you have gas in your car. Hope you have all your Christmas gifts. Hope you have all of those things, because ultimately, it might, if you don't have it now, once that snow starts and that ice forms on the ground, you might not want to drive anywhere. Out of here on this Wednesday. A couple more shows left, a few days before Christmas. Basketball's on tonight. I hope everyone watches the Buckeye basketball team hoop, because I think this team is going to be special, and they'll have a bounce back win tonight against Maine.